Hello and welcome to Chick Chat and Chill. So glad you joined us. My name is Antoinette. I'm the owner of Pixel This, which is a full service design firm. So just a quick little tidbit. I had a client, they had a brand, it was failing. It was in a declining market, which means that every brand in that market, it was just going down. They did a package redesign and their sales went up 17% just from looks alone. So that's the thing good design could do. They didn't do any marketing, they didn't do any advertising. So give me a call if you want to see how you can increase your sales. But first, let me introduce Laura, my co host.
So people really do judge a book by its cover.
They do.
Okay, I'm Laura Fickett. I'm here at Fickett Financial Education and Business Coaching. I love to help people make more money, manage it better, and retain it to build their wealth. It's really important to grow your finances. So if you can increase your sales by 17%, I highly recommend it. I love to do free consultations. You can ask me anything, and there's no obligation to come through my workshop or do any private coaching. I just want to help people level up their financial game. So reach out to me. You'll find it, Fickett. It's kind of a unique name if you Google it. All right, we are going to start today with the topic of lonely. We're going to try and make it fun, but it's so sad. I feel like people are lonely. And I don't know if it's because of the scamdemic. I mean, a pandemic? Anyway, I don't know if it was that, or I don't know if it's the disconnect with the phones. I mean, we're going to talk about all kinds of different things today, but I feel like people are lonely. Even in groups of people, they seem lonely. In their relationships, they seem lonely. My kids are experiencing loneliness, which I never even thought about being lonely when I was a kid. Like, I grew up the youngest of seven. My mom stayed home. And the first time I was ever alone, I was 18 years old. I got an apartment. Like, I'm not kidding. This is totally true. This is also the first time I had an anxiety attack. I got into my apartment and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm completely alone. There's like nobody here. It's just me. I know I got an anxiety attack. And what did I do? Like a scared little puppy, I ran back home for dinner. I was like, Mom, can I have dinner here tonight?
That's so
I
cute.
know. But like I didn't experience loneliness, I guess, because I grew up in such a big family, but I didn't even realize when I was a kid what loneliness is. And my kids are around people all the time, but they still have a sense of loneliness. So maybe, some of our listeners are experiencing
Yeah.
that too. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, I think like when people think of lonely, like most people will think of, maybe like an elderly person and they're widowed and they can't drive anymore and they're stuck to the home. But loneliness isn't always the absence of people around you. It's actually a lack of connection, and I think, if you look, the majority of people like polled or whatever, like the biggest factor is actually the young, and it's 16 to 24
Wow.
year olds are actually the largest demographic of lonely people. So
Aw.
it's sad. It's really
It
sad.
breaks my heart. It's got to be these phones.
Yeah, so that's definitely a point. Like it's actually has been shown the higher your social media use, usually the higher your loneliness. They are correlated.
I think it's because it gives you a false sense of like having a community and having friends. But when you have like issues in your life, I remember, okay, like I'm young, but my first cell phone was when I was 24. I know. Well, not that young. But I remember like when I was younger and I had a problem, I would call up my friends and sometimes the phone had a cord. Anyway, I know. It was like a treat when we got the really long cord and went down the hallway. But I would call up my friends and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset about this teacher, about this stuff, whatever. And I would talk to people about it. Now I even find as an adult, like I've moved. And so, I'm trying to make new friends. We had a podcast about how to make new friends and everything
Yeah.
like that. And sometimes like I really need to be cognizant about just picking up, like dialing the phone. I called Antoinette yesterday because I'm like, she texted me something and I'm like, I'm not waiting for this conversation. Let's have a conversation. And I think that sparks like the loneliness is
Yeah.
that we're not having the conversations anymore. And so when something is on our mind, we're just trying to deal with it ourselves.
Yeah.
I know personally, I don't feel a lot of loneliness because, I spend so much time with God, talking to God, like talking to Jesus. And so I never really feel lonely. I always feel like he's with me. But I can see where people
Yeah.
just are lonely. And I think it's this false sense of disconnect from the phones.
Yeah, I think you hit on like so many gold mines in what you just said. I think it's a lot of what you said. So, first on social media, I think you're basically scrolling through the highlight reel of somebody's life. So a lot of times, then it's that comparison, where you feel comparison's a dangerous thing to do in any situation. But then when you're like, oh, look, this person got this, or they just went here, or they just went there, and then I think that makes you feel inferior or lonely and isolated. And that's what it is. So I think part of that, and I know too, like when I have a lot going on in my life, I'm like, it's a struggle to get on social media. And I know I should for certain things with business, like, my business has to do posts, I have to interact with clients, but it's not something that I actively do.
Hmm.
Where when there's less going on in your life, that's usually the people that are on there. So your highlight reel isn't generally.
It's totally a highlight reel. Like
Yeah.
I just went on vacation. And if you think that I went away with my 2 adult daughters, my 12-year-old son, and my husband for 5 days, like five of us people for 3 weeks, and all we did was laugh and have fun, like in those pictures on social media, you are incorrect. Like, what was I going to do? Take a picture of us like arguing about something? Look at this is us over here by Monument.
Look, yeah, look at the tears and the the tissues we use.
No. There was one post. Okay, there's one post where I put it on Facebook as full disclosure. Like I'm an open book. It was one of the bread booths in London.
Yeah, the
and
telephone.
You remember.
Yeah.
Like I posted my husband like kissing me in there. Like, well, my husband doesn't like public display of affection, right? So what happened before the picture was like, get in here and kiss me. Like, you didn't see that on social media.
No, it's so true. I remember we were doing I always used to do a big Oktoberfest every year. And same thing, like I forgot to take pictures during the Oktoberfest. So the next day I made us dress up. And then I'm like, let's just take some pictures. And then it was like, they were upset at this. So like in every picture, it just looked like we just finished crying. It's like, okay, these aren't going anywhere.
The reenactment of her fun.
Yeah, it was just goofy. No, it wasn't even for Facebook. It was just like because we dress up. So something like how we dressed that year or what, a type of thing. But, like Halloween, what was my Halloween costume 3 years ago or whatever. So, but I think some other, good things you kind of brought up too is that interaction. So I can't tell you how many times like I've had a party and people have kids or whatever, and they're sitting on the couch next to each other texting. And then I just assume they're texting their friend, but they're actually like texting each other. So rather than have a conversation, they would actually text each other. And I find text is like the lowest form of communication out there.
The sneakiest. Because if we're in a big party and I'm texting the person next to me, it's because I can't say what I want to say about somebody else across the room. I'm just kidding. God hates gossip. Sorry.
No, but it is. And you're not getting the tone, the inflection, whatever. And I find when I say things, like even when I texted Laura last night, it was a very high level surface thing that I knew I can't text this to her,
Yeah, we're a little connected though. So I was like, oh, no. I need to talk to her about this. Yeah. And I was right. I did need to talk to her about that. It's a different podcast.
But it is that where I think people are so used to, like when you're connected on social media, you feel like connected globally. You could be speaking with somebody in Switzerland and then somebody in Hawaii, but you can't have a conversation with the person next to you. So that will, to me, I think elicit loneliness. And I think part of it is too, and I think this is people have a problem with confrontation. So a lot of times too, like you could be dating somebody for like 6 months or a year, but they rather ghost the person than have an uncomfortable conversation. Or if somebody does something to upset them or you're in a bad mood, they don't want to bring it up. or they're so used to video games and cheat codes. Well, there is no cheat code to having a good relationship. You know what I mean?
Or tough
It's
conversations. Like there's no
no,
cheat code. Like there's no good way to do it. I mean, it's
no.
just practice.
And honestly, from relationships I've had, I know you never want to bring up something terrible, or, if you're dating somebody, but it is an issue. The best thing to do is bring it up, not ignore and sweep it under the rug to the point where you're like, you know what? It's at the point now where I rather never see him again than bring this up. I mean, that's terrible. You know what I mean? So if you just brought it up,
Must be an Italian family.
no, but the thing is, if you bring it up, the sooner the better, and then if you have that conversation, I found a lot of the times it brings relationships even closer, because relationships don't necessarily grow when everything's like marshmallows and roses. It's when you kind of hit that, you know, there's a tough situation, and then you kind of tackle it together, and then you learn how that person thinks, and they learn how you think. And then it not only helps that situation, but then it helps things going forward in the future, and it just makes the bond stronger. And whether that's a relationship or a friendship, sometimes those obstacles end up being the best thing that relationship ever happened,
Yeah, but if people don't share, that's where the loneliness comes in, because people feel lonely when they feel like they're experiencing something and there's nobody else that's either experiencing it or nobody that can help them, or,
Yeah.
and it could be something small, like, they just had a bad day and they don't have anybody to tell,
Yeah.
because they're not going to post that on social media. And
No.
the people that do post all of their bad days on social media, I'm like, you're just fishing,
Yeah.
like, for attention, which is kind of sad too. But I
But
think the technology is really, I mean, I have to assume that that is the main problem for why the increase in loneliness,
yeah.
because there's more and more people. Like, how can you be in a room
Yeah, it's
full of
not a
people and then,
proximity issue,
no, it's not.
But what I hear a lot too is people say, because I know sometimes I lack a filter I just say stuff, and then people are
No.
like, what, Um, and then I guess it's even worse when Laura's
But
like, how could, how could anyone
no,
think that about you?
unfounded.
Yeah. But a lot of people struggle with that. I mean, you don't have to go to my extreme where I just, oops. But I think people, they're waiting for the person next to them to do something. So let's say they meet somebody and they're like, oh, what a nice person. It'd be nice to get together. But then they'll be like, oh, we should get together. And they're like, yeah. But then nobody makes the first move. You know what I mean? And they're waiting. Well, they could do it. They could do it. You know what? You just drew the short straw. It's on you. If you want to have a good relationship, take responsibility for it. If you're, part of loneliness is this is what you've created,
True. I mean, I think if people were more genuine, then maybe we would have less of a loneliness problem, because, I'm not saying you have to be mean. And sometimes my husband's like, that was a little mean, Laura. And I'm like, oh, you used my name too. So, like, really, I'm in trouble. I
Double whammy.
But
Oh,
like, if people were more genuine and they're having a hard day and they could say like, well, I'm having a hard day. Like, instead of when you say, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm fine.
yeah.
That's,
And I
that's
think,
not true. But I mean, you don't want to air your dirty laundry, but I mean, sometimes people come up to me and they're like, oh my God, I haven't seen you forever. I miss you. This happened a couple months ago. And I said, did you really? And they were like, what? Did I really what? I said, did you really miss me? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, I mean, we're in the age of technology. Like, if you really missed me,
you could have called.
you could have texted me or called me in the past 6 months. And they were like so shocked that I even, like, the words were even coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, well, seriously, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
I miss coming to these events, but I'm not going to say I miss somebody, like, if I didn't miss them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people are just, I think social media too makes people a little fake.
Yeah.
I don't know, because you're not posting bad stuff. You're always like trying to like rose color glass things up,
Yeah.
So then people go out and about and they try to act like fake
Well,
social media. I
I
mean, they
think
certainly, when it comes to mean stuff, people say the meanest stuff on social media that they would never
say in
say
person.
in person.
Yeah.
I had an issue years ago like when I wasn't so filled with the Holy Spirit, let's just put it that way. And somebody said stuff. And I said, why don't you meet me for lunch? And you can say these things to my face and we'll see if the conversation goes a little different. And they did meet me with they brought a friend. Like,
Oh, God.
like, I know. Like that, like, come on. Seriously, we're adults. I would take you away from your friend anyway
Yeah.
in the back alley. Just kidding. But I'm like, then they were nice to me. Shocking, right? To my
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it the way I think you took it on social media. I'm like, I don't know how else I could take you calling me those names. I
Yeah.
don't know how else I was supposed to take that.
Yeah.
Just because you put a little like symbol where the I is supposed to be in the B word, it's still the same word.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
Like,
is,
call me that to my
the
face.
other thing is I find they'll say something and then just put like laughing emoji after it to like, oh, you're being a B emoji, laughing emoji. No, this isn't funny.
That's like, but don't take any offense to what I'm going to say.
Because it's followed with a smiley.
Maybe
No.
that's why we're lonely. Maybe there's a lot of horrible people out there.
Yeah. No, but I think there's also a couple things in what you said that is keys. Find out why you're lonely. Is it because you're having problems that you have nobody to talk to? Is it because you'd like to go out and do things and don't feel you have anyone to go to them with? I think it's key to find out what you're feeling lonely with and maybe start journaling. Like, if you're having difficulty saying it to somebody, you should at least say to yourself today, like, I feel lonely because, and then write why. And then maybe you could see a pattern like, well, because there was this concert I wanted to go and there was this I wanted to go to. Well, you know what? Pick up the phone and people are like, oh, well, what if they say no? Honestly, if somebody I just met called and just said, hey, I know this is kind of out of the blue. We just met, but there's this great concert coming up. You want to go? I'm going to say yes or no. If I said no, I'm not going to look down on them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them for asking me.
No, and I assure you she's not going to do any research on the concert or you. See if it's a safe environment.
She's very true with that. So I'll just be like, sure. No, I'm kidding. But
you know what though? Some people sometimes I feel lonely like the vacation example, right? So I'm with my whole entire family for a long period of time. And then we come home and my daughters go back to their lives and my son goes back to school and, my husband goes back to his life. And like you experience loneliness because you're like, or you go to a concert and you have a great time with your friends. And then you come home and the next day, like you got to clean the house or whatever. And you're like, I think everybody experiences that kind of loneliness. And that loneliness is completely normal.
Yeah.
And completely justified. I think what we're trying to help and talk to people about is the
chronic
loneliness.
Yeah. Like it's not a change of scenery or you got used to this great event and you come home, but something where you notice there's a longing for something more in your life. And that's usually connection. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I would always suggest read the Bible, get connected with God. But I do think that people need friends and they need to talk to family and they need to talk to people and develop that connection, real connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not Facebook connections or I don't know, is MySpace still around?
No, but part of that is for example, even in a business setting, if you go into an office, let's say there's a business meeting, everyone before the meeting, a lot of times they're on their phone, they're on this. If it's, you're all meeting around a conference table, then all of a sudden they'll begin and they'll put the phone down, not away, but it's a big deal if the face is down versus up, and the thing is, that's the time where in the past you would just turn to the person like, hey, I heard your dad just died, how you doing? That's when connections start. It doesn't always have to be this planned event. But if you constantly fill up your space with just, garbage things that make you look occupied. Let me check social media. Let me do this. Did I get a message? I said hello to 5 people. Did anyone say hello back? It's that type of thing that that's not building any sort of connection. You do get, I think with social media, you do get a dopamine when all of a sudden it's ding, ding, and people get hooked on that dopamine high. But, that's why alcoholics start drinking and stuff like that. It's a false high. You're better off creating real connections. And like I said, even if let's say you had a really bad day. That doesn't mean like, oh, who can I call and get together with, and maybe someone will have coffee with me. Just pick up the phone and just go, hey, do you mind? I had a bad day. Can you just be there for me, like, for the 10 minutes? And unless somebody's having like a really terrible day, if they're a good person, more likely than not, or if they're in the middle of something, they'd be like, oh my God, my child just got hit in the head with the baseball. We're on the way to the emergency room. Can I call you when I get back? But even that is going to take away your loneliness because
You made a
you,
connection.
you just made some sort of connection and now you feel someone cares about you and they're going to connect with you later. So it's those type of things that if you feel it and do nothing about it, then other than just realize it's there, that doesn't really help. That's like going to a doctor and going, well, I have this problem. And they just, okay, take this prescription. They're not targeting, which is what a lot of people do. They don't target the problem. Take this pill and it'll alleviate the symptoms, And that's what like social media is. It's alleviating the loneliness symptom, but it's not curing the loneliness. It's actually probably causing a lot of it.
I have some really good tools for not curing loneliness, but helping. Because I remember like when I was going through divorce, I had 3 little kids, and I didn't want to talk to like my family. It was a bad one, and like I just didn't want to talk to people about it, but I felt lonely. And so I started therapy. And a therapist is like somebody that you can pay to dump all your garbage on. Like, it's like fantastic. I mean, I feel bad for them. That's what they want to do. So whatever. And now like you can get a lot of therapy free or cheap or whatever. I just saw there was one like online that you can do, like a
Yeah.
lot of Zoom therapy now and whatever. But you can just unload and dump and get rid of all of those negative emotions, and they dissipate from the therapist. So that's a good one. And I also found that sometimes when I'm lonely, picking up a really good book, and I know it's going to make me sound like a total dork, but I get so immersed in books. Like, not movies, my mind can wander and stuff like that, but in books, like I get so immersed that when I'm done with a good book, like I feel like I have just stepped out of the world and I'm like, why am I not in a Victorian dress anymore? Like, what's wrong with me? Like I get so immersed in like I feel like I'm one of the characters, and then and yes, it doesn't address like the long term, but it does help
Yeah.
like to, start reading. The therapy though, highly recommend that you find somebody good to talk to. I've had the same person, now they're a life coach for over 15 years, probably 20 years. And I haven't talked to him in like 3 years, but I could email him today and say, hey, I'm having some issues I need to work through or some garbage I need to dump.
Yeah.
And he'd set up an appointment and dump it and off I go.
Yeah. The other thing I found too is um like church groups. So I know like when I went back to church, I was an adult, and it was the pastor's like, oh, we have church groups, small groups, everyone calls it a different thing. And to me, I just thought people would be reading the Bible crying. I mean, that's what I had in my mind of what a church group is going to be like. They're going to
If they're reading the book of Job, maybe.
No, but like people have these emotional break. I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. And then he's like, just go, the worst case, you don't go the next week. Or if you don't like that, try a different one. I was like, yeah, let me do that. And I found I made such great connections. I mean, on such a deeper level than somebody I work with. Because you might not necessarily want to tell the person you work with those deep, dark things of what's going on in your life. But with church, like the way these small groups work, or you really don't take it outside of the group. It's kind of like in the confines of the group, and you're dealing with people that want what's best for you.
Yes.
True. If you're, let's say, trying to win the promotion, you'll get 10 people praying for you to win the promotion, where your person next to you will be like, why are you getting promoted? I deserve that. And there's jealousy, and you know what I mean? You don't get that in those type of groups.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very uplifting. And then the other thing I find, no matter what you're going through, somebody's gone through the same thing, if not worse.
Or they know somebody that's gone through it,
or they've gone through it and come out better on the other side, and God put you two together for that reason. So you'd be so shocked at how therapeutic something like a good and the friendships that I made through church are some of the deepest friendships I've had, and these are people I would have never connected with we run in totally different circles. We have totally different schedules and different, vocations that we would have never crossed paths otherwise. And they're some of my closest friends.
Yeah, I know.
So,
So the thing about that though, like that's, adults. I guess kids go into some Bible studies and whatever, but if the biggest, like that statistic about 16 to 24-year-olds, that one just blows me away because what are we going to do about this next generation? So I would say, like, if you're an adult, right, whether you have kids or not, obviously, if they're your own kids, like, reach out to them more and try and connect with them more. But, maybe reach out to the younger generation and try and mentor them. And
yeah.
even bringing up the subject, I think, is important. So the fact that we're doing a podcast on loneliness, like whoever's watching it right now is like, wow, those girls experience loneliness anyway. Like it helps you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah.
We're all experiencing it different ways at different times and all kinds of stuff. And I think that helps feeling connected. So even bringing up the subject, like, hey, I'm feeling lonely today. Like, I don't know what's the matter with me. Like, and having a conversation with a younger group, if do you ever feel lonely?
Yeah.
They might be like, yeah, sometimes I do feel lonely. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's our job to mentor.
Yeah. And,
Really.
and I think a lot of things too is so many times adults and parents, they try to take away, they try to, do what they think is doing best for the child. A lot of time is sheltering them from the aches and pains of society, like they don't want them to interact with this because they might get hurt or but you got to give them a big enough leash that they do fail on their and allow that because it could develops a backbone and they're not going to get so timid about even extending themselves just that little bit. And that's what you're doing is you create this bubble and it's just shorten the leash and shorten the leash and shorten the leash. And before long, it's like, I'd really like to do this, but I don't want to ask. I really feel lonely, but I don't, and it's not, you're doing a disservice to your child or your student or, that younger person that, life doesn't have a cheat code. Life doesn't have somebody to always swoop in and, talk with the coach and make sure they get playtime. If they're not doing well, allow them, any child can feel joy in its success, but to actually teach a child to find that joy in failure is a huge thing. And I think that will blossom into like developing relationships, thickening their skin, understanding when they need help, when to reach out. If you realize, hey, I'm struggling with this, maybe they'll need a mentor. Maybe they'll ask a friend who's really good at soccer and they're struggling. These are things that are helpful in society.
It's tiny little stuff too. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to let my kids walk all over cut glass or anything, right? But just this is a recent example. My son put butter in the microwave and he wanted to melt it because he was going to make something. I think he was making cookies or whatever. And I didn't tell him like how long to put it in the microwave. And so he didn't really know and he put it in too long and like butter actually when it'll start to boil and then burst.
And Laura just likes cleaning.
Oh,
Or maybe her son just.
I hate cleaning. But I heard it burst and he was like, oh, like, and it's not like you put metal in the microwave, right? And I was like, oh, how long did you put it in for? And he's like, a minute and a half. And I was like, oh, well, he's like, yeah, I think I need to put it in for less time. I'm like, yeah, let's clean this up. I didn't yell at him.
Yeah.
I'm like, but look at how smooth and silky the inside of the microwave is now. And we laughed about it and everything like that. If it's not going to hurt him, let him make the mistake. And then, he'll learn. It's a stupid, simple example. But, now when he was doing something else the other day, he said like, Mom, how long should I put this in the microwave? Now he's asking for help because he made the mistake and so it brings dialogue together.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. Don't let them make mistakes that are going to be like,
Yeah.
if they drop a glass and it breaks, don't just wait and let them walk all over it.
Yeah. No, I'll make one last point and then
Oh, I know,
we're going to
we
have
gotta
to
wrap
wrap
it
it up.
up.
But I think, to Laura's thing with dialogue, I think, and this is a pet peeve of mine, but people just constantly resort to the, hey, how are you? What are you doing? Like, hey, how are you? What are you doing? Like, that doesn't build any sort of connection whatsoever. If all I did, oh, I'm good. How are you? You know what I mean? Instead, just go, literally make conversation. You could Google it. You could watch our show. There's 50 million ways to start a conversation, but just go, what
are you doing today?
Yeah. What's the funnest thing you did last week? What was the last thing that made you laugh? Like, these are things that peek into that person's lives that now all of a sudden you can have a conversation about, rather than what's up,
Or just ask like, hey, what are you doing today?
what's on the agenda,
What have you done since I saw you last week? It doesn't have to be an interrogation. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What do you do? Doesn't. But show interest, show connection. Because think about it, like, just put yourself in the Wayback Machine before cell phones, if you can. How did you interact with people? You were less lonely. Interact with people that way.
Yeah. Or even, like I said, start with something you do so they don't feel like they're being interrogated. Like, oh my God, I just had, whatever, the best ice cream at such and such, what was the last meal you had that, spawned that type of reaction, and then they don't feel like, why should I tell you? You know what I mean? Because you just divulged something, and then it's a tit for tat. So that's an easy way to,
Well, this is a great segue into our next topic, which is going to be the difference between generations. Because the generation I was in, I told you I didn't get a cell phone until I was 24. So when I was 16 to 24, no cell phone. We had pagers. That's a whole lot of fun. We'll talk about it maybe on the next episode. But until we come back and see you again, never stop learning
and never stop laughing. See you soon.